Coming in hot, 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 Lisa shares her financial tips and strategies to build wealth, have fun with finances, and be debt-free without having a restrictive budget. From bankrupt to millionaire, Lisa knows what it's like to feel as if you're living paycheck to paycheck. Her unconventional money multiplier system is the very wealth protocol that enabled her to retire 2.5 years early, pay down $100,000 of debt in 6 months, and move to her dream home at the beach. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to rate the show, give us some love. We would love your review. And remember, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's what you do with it. And some words of advice: pay yourself first. Are you ready to partner with money? Go check out the money dating game at idatemoney.com and choose your partner. We hope you always get the date you want. Hey, says that I'm live, but I don't see this. So let me just double check. Hey, everyone, Lisa Jenny here, your wealth activator, coming in hot, hot, hot with some crush on debt tips for you. How much debt do you have? How much really? Do you know the total amount that you owe? Debt gets a bad rap. So many think that it's, bad to have debt. We shouldn't have debt. But that's debt doesn't like that. We can leverage debt to our advantage. Actually, debt likes to be crushed on. Debt loves to be able to say, hey, I've done something great for you. On my podcast, I Date Money, I've been interviewing relationship coaches, and we've been paralleling relationships with money, with finances, with our debt, because we attract the opposite. And on my website, idatemoney.com, there's a money dating game. And on the money dating game, you go through and you meet 7 archetypes. And you get to learn while you're going through to choose your partner, you get to learn about who drives you, what makes you want to rack up debt, what makes you want to spend money, what makes you want to swipe. You're obviously in love with debt because you keep using it, right? You keep inviting it over. You keep saying, hey, come on, let's go hang out. And really what debt is borrowing from your future self. And when we borrow from our future self, we're just telling our present self, like, hey, I want this now. I don't want to wait for it, right? What about that thing, that product, that service that you don't want to wait, that you want to borrow that money now? So think about how much you love your debt, because you want to hang out with it all the time, right? I can't type and talk at the same time. So I'm just going to tag everyone and invite them all to come in. So if you're watching, say, hey, drop a thing. Are you brave enough to share the total amount of debt that you have? I was just on a call with my client. Hang on here. Come hang out with us. Okay. So I just got off a call with my client. I have a monthly group, Crush on Debt membership, and she's in that. She's also in my wealth acceleration program. So she gets an extra call to go over her debt. And we were looking at her debt, and she was just beside herself. Over $85,000. And she had sent me a Telegram message, and she said, have you ever helped anybody with this much debt? I'm like, yeah, like hundreds of clients with $100,000 worth of debt. And it gets to be overwhelming. But before, we started working together, she knew she wanted my help, but she had no idea how much debt she had. And one of the first things that we did to create her wealth activation roadmap was to love on her debt. So I have this I Love Debt worksheet that the clients do when they come into the monthly membership program, and they list all of their debt. Right? If you ever heard of the snowball effect, raise your hand if you've heard of the snowball effect. So basically, there's two ways to pay down your credit card debt, the snowball or the avalanche. And when we love on debt, I think we love on our debt more when we implement the snowball, because we create that momentum and it gets bigger and it brings us more joy, and it's fun because you get to see more progress. Whereas the avalanche takes a little bit longer. It's more of that, let's be friends type of relationship. You will get to know each other, and then we'll slowly work down our debt. Because with the avalanche, you're taking the highest interest and you're paying that off first. And the balances can be outrageous. And because there's such a large amount, you don't build that momentum. So when you create the I Love Debt worksheet, you create this momentum. You look at all of your debt and you say, wow, look at all that debt. Most of us don't do that, right? I remember the first time I did this, I was like, oh my God, I have all this debt, $100,000. How did this happen? And if you don't know me, my story is at 22, I filed for bankruptcy. I was a bankruptcy paralegal filing for bankruptcy because I carried $32,000 worth of debt. And, that's equivalent to around 75K in today's dollars. And when I think about that, single mom, living paycheck to paycheck, working a side gig. I've always had some kind of a side business in addition to my full-time job. I just couldn't make ends meet. So I was borrowing money from my future self to cover my present expenses, to care for my growing child. But then my generous heart allowed myself to be connived into signing loans for two family members who reneged on those loans. So now their debt became my debt, my responsibility. And it was overwhelming. And I was like, how could I ever do it? I was literally making $5 an hour. Like literally, that was the pay scale for an administrative assistant back in 1990 something or other, 1990. And so the debt was affording me the opportunity to be able to clothe my child and myself and to enjoy going out and having fun, because all of my income was going for necessary expenses, was going for those four walls. So when I looked at my debt, it was devastating. It was overwhelming. And it made me feel like I was in a cave and that I was just choking. And when I was relieved of that debt, standing in front of that judge, it was like, wow, I could really appreciate the release that I have from not owing this money, but knowing of the long-term effect it had on me. I hated debt. I was like, you know what? Debt sucks. I never, ever will be in debt again. Never, ever. And we have to be careful of the language we use around that, right? Because when you say things, you just expand that and you invite more of it in. So I was debt-free for many, many years. And because I was so irresponsible and couldn't trust myself not to use credit cards again, I closed all of my accounts, just like Dave Ramsey says, and I promised never to get into the situation of having to file for bankruptcy again. Mind my language. I didn't promise not to be debt-free. I didn't promise not to use credit cards. I promised never to file for bankruptcy again. See, we tell ourselves these stories when it comes to debt because we get to leverage debt. When we get into a good relationship with money, when we start to date money and we see money as a person, we get to understand that debt can be used to our advantage. That is how I got addicted to 0% credit cards. I loved zero. I still love. I think it's a game to get as many 0% credit cards as you can and use that money to grow my investments, because to me it's a game, and I know maybe some of you like to play those online games or those virtual games. I don't even know what they're called. I'm not a gamer, but that's an addiction, right? It's a sense of gambling. And when we're playing with 0% credit to leverage our investments, to grow our money, it's a little bit of a risk when you have a story that you tell yourself that I can go into debt to help me get ahead. I'm going to use debt, like even purchasing a coaching program or purchasing a product that you believe in that's going to help you get to the next level, right? I'm a Young Living person. I'm a certified aromatherapy practitioner, and I use Young Living essential oils in my practice to help create that experience for my clients to release all the stories that they're telling them. When I first got into it, of course, it's an MLM, and I built out a team. I had a great team. I made, I can't remember what rank it was, senior silver, and I was on my way to gold. And I plummeted because I was like, I'm working my tail off for all this commission, and all I'm doing is incurring debt, and I'm tired of debt. At that point, I sat down with myself after actually doing my program and thinking, oh my goodness, I was afraid to add up all of my debt. And when I added up all of my debt, I had 12 credit cards. All of them had 0% interest, but they were all expiring. All but one was expiring at the same exact time, which means the interest rate was going to between 24% to 29%. And I didn't know this because in my mind, I was just going to play this game. I was going to take risk and transfer the money to another 0%. But guess what? When your credit limits get more than 30% of the amount that they allow you to borrow, they don't give you any more offers. So my offers ran out, and I wasn't able to negotiate a 0% at all. And I called up the credit card companies, and I would try to negotiate, and they'd be like, nope, we're sorry, Mrs. Drennan. We can't offer you that. You really need to pay down these balances. And I realized that a personal loan, not a consolidated loan, but a personal loan would afford me the opportunity to get rid of these high interest rates. So this was like one of the archetypes is Gary the Gambler. So I was kind of like Gary the Gambler, taking these risks, rolling the dice, saying, okay, never really connecting my story with money, my relationship with money, with this debt, understanding why I kept racking it back up, knowing I was in love with it. It's like that relationship, that twisted narcissist gaslighting relationship that you're in. That's the relationship I had with my debt. It was like drawing me in, alluring me to, oh, let's see what game you could do it. You can use this. And then of course, I went from my one MLM company to another, building out a coaching business, kept changing my niche, thinking I'm just going to make 10K months and that's going to solve everything. And I invested in coaches. I invested in all kinds of coaches. And, it wasn't until I invested in Nonstop that things started to change for me. Like I really started to see like, oh, I haven't been doing this right. Because we always get coaches that have the results that we want, right? And we invest in programs and people that have the results that we want. And when I looked at my debt, I was just like, okay, I don't need a financial coach. I have a marketing coach. I have a business coach. What I need is money mindset, because there's something wrong with my way of thinking that I want to play this game with debt. Like I want to be in love with debt, but I wanted to have a healthy relationship with debt. I wanted to be able to look at debt and say, okay, I get to use you to my advantage. I get to borrow other people's money because it works for me to help me get to my next level. And then I can still let my investments grow. Okay. So I had spent like 20 years from the time I was 22 until the time I was around 40, completely debt free, right? What I did with all of my money, because I wasn't a good steward, I wasn't managing my money properly, I had to take it away from myself. My old story was money burns a hole in your pocket. You need to get rid of your money and take it away from yourself because you're not good at keeping money, right? So what I did is I set up money buckets and I had everything on auto draw. So everything was accounted for, and I socked away 35% into retirement and investments, because who wants to work at a 9-to-5 forever, right? Never realizing that my side gig was going to be something that I absolutely love doing. And when you love doing it, you can't help but do it more, right? So as I went through this process, I wasn't paying attention. And I was like, I'm not touching my money that I saved because that's for a rainy day. And when does the rainy day come, right? So then racking up the debt because I felt this lack, because all of my money was going towards everything and I wasn't enjoying not a dime. I wasn't having fun. Every time I went out for a restaurant, I was like, I would pull teeth to try to spend the money. But if I used a credit card, then it was fun. And I would be like, ooh, I love this. I love using this credit card to pay for this meal. And then I got points and it gave me that hit of dopamine that was like, woohoo, right? And then the bill came and I was just like, oh, it's 0%, no big deal, right? I'll pay it off later. And that's where that cycle gets to be in. But when you look at debt and you say, I love debt, and you start to pay attention to it, and you start to ask yourself, how does this purchase help me grow? That's when you can get a handle on it. So I'm going to encourage you to do your I Love Debt worksheet. It's really simple. Just list all of your debt, the minimum payment, the payoff balance, the interest rate, and give thanks for that debt. Give thanks to your future self for allowing your present and past self to borrow that money, to use it. And then really think about how debt has afforded you the opportunity to do what you're able to do. How did you use that debt? For me, I had education, travel, I bought vehicles for myself and my children. I remodeled my home. I did really beautiful things with this money. And then I got to pay it back. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful feeling. And if this is something you'd like help with, drop a money bag below and we'll hop on a call and I will set you up with your I Love Debt worksheet and help you see how much debt has afforded you the opportunity to be exactly where you need to be, to get to exactly where you need to go. And remember, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's what you do with it. Coming in hot, 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 Lisa shares her financial tips and strategies to build wealth, have fun with finances, and be debt-free without having a restrictive budget. From bankrupt to millionaire, Lisa knows what it's like to feel as if you're living paycheck to paycheck. Her unconventional money multiplier system is the very wealth protocol that enabled her to retire 2.5 years early, pay down $100,000 of debt in 6 months, and move to her dream home at the beach. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to rate the show, give us some love. We would love your review. And remember, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's what you do with it. And some words of advice: pay yourself first. Are you ready to partner with money? Go check out the money dating game at idatemoney.com and choose your partner. We hope you always get the date you want.